Hello everyone. Before we jump into today's content, I get a ton of questions and comments on my channel asking where to start. I have hundreds of videos on my channel right now, and it can feel completely overwhelming, especially if you're new to my channel and trying to figure out how to put this information together to get started on your recovery from your chronic dizziness symptoms. The place to start is the free course. It is very easy to sign up for. It is completely 100% free. It is very comprehensive, and it will walk you through how to put together all the information on my channel into a step-by-step process so you can start putting together a recovery plan for yourself. As of May 2024, over 10,000 people have taken the course, and I constantly get feedback from people who've been helped by the course. Once you've taken the course, all the other content on my channel is going to make a lot more sense, and you're going to be well on your way to recovering from your symptoms. You can sign up using the link below or go to thesteadycoach.com/free-course. Please enjoy today's video. Hello everyone. My name is Dr. Yonit Arthur. I'm an audiologist and coach. You are on The Steady Coach, and today we are doing this long overdue video on the topic of why movement and physical triggers cause your symptoms to worsen in many cases, even though you have neural circuit dizziness. In other words, medically unexplained chronic dizziness symptoms that are persisting even though medical causes and tissue damage don't explain why you're having them. This includes diagnoses like PPPD or 3PD, vestibular migraine, Malda-de-Barkmont syndrome, and those of you who have physical tissue damage in one ear, known as unilateral hypofunction, unilateral weakness, or a history of neuritis or labyrinthitis that has not gotten better, and if you still have symptoms despite having gone through a typical treatment regimen, which is usually about 3 months of vestibular rehab therapy. This also includes those of you who don't have a specific diagnosis, but whose dizziness symptoms aren't medically explained. In all these cases, I refer to the kind of dizziness that you have as neural circuit dizziness. Neural circuit dizziness means that your symptoms are real, but they are not being caused by physical tissue damage or disease. Rather, they are being caused by a nervous system error. They're being caused by your brain misinterpreting sensory information. For more on this and to understand how neural circuit dizziness works, please pause the video here and watch the basics video that I will link to in the video description below. Now, when people first find my channel and they hear me describe neural circuit dizziness, it's really easy to get confused because they say, okay, I guess that makes sense, except I have a physical problem because when I do something physical, like turn my head or bend over or go for a walk, my symptoms get worse. That's not just in my head, that's really happening. So before I get into why this happens, let's clear up an important misconception. There is no dichotomy between a physical cause of dizziness and a neural circuit cause of dizziness. What I mean by this is all sensory systems, whether they're working well or not, operate using a mechanism called predictive coding. In other words, your nervous system's job is to interpret information from your sensory systems and then tell you what it is perceiving. Your experience then is determined by the sensory systems themselves and by what your brain is expecting to happen. This is true for vision, for hearing, for sense of touch, for smell and taste, as well as for your vestibular system. For example, your eyes are always taking in all the information that's in your visual field. It's up to your central nervous system to take this information, filter it, compare it to its prior experiences with similar situations, and then tell you what you're actually experiencing. So sensory information plus brain predictions equals your actual experience. And again, this is true regardless of whether a sensory system is working well or not. So when we're talking about dizziness, the actual problem is that the sensory information your brain is receiving from your balance organs, so that includes the organs in your inner ears as well as your eyes and sense of touch, that doesn't match what your brain is predicting. Don't worry, we'll talk more about predictions in a moment. So what I'm getting at here is there's no such thing as physical versus in your head dizziness. All dizziness, all sensory experiences are in your head. The question is the sensory information coming up from your various sense organs in your body correct? Is the problem in the predictions that your brain is making? In the case of neural circuit dizziness, the problem is in the predictions. And this holds true in two different ways. If you never had any tissue damage at all, the predictions are just wrong, even though all the sensory information coming in from your ears and other sensory organs is correct. That ends up creating dizziness, because your brain's predictions don't match the sensory information coming in. The second way this can happen is if you did have tissue damage that affected your ear or a different system associated with the balance system. Typically what happens is if there's a change in a sensory system, say you have an eye injury, for example, your brain figures out that there was a change and it recalibrates its predictions. It adjusts its expectations. So then its expectations now match the reality coming in from your senses. In this second scenario, what's happened to those of you who did have tissue damage and who are still having persistent dizziness symptoms, even though you've done all of the conventional therapy, is that your brain has simply not correctly updated its predictions. You had a change in your sensory system. Your brain should have updated its predictions so that you no longer have dizziness, but it did not do that. In either of these cases, though, your brain is really specific about the situations that it can misinterpret. Some of you, for example, may notice that certain movements bring on symptoms and other ones don't. Some of you don't even have movement-triggered symptoms at all. This is because your brain switches predictions based on what you're doing at the time. For example, if you're walking, your brain is going to have totally different predictions of what's going to happen to your sensory organs versus when you're driving. When it comes to movement triggers, what's happening is your sensory organs are sending new information to your brain. Basically, they're just sending raw data to your brain that would normally be interpreted as you're moving. Because your brain is using bad predictions, it's getting confused by that sensory information. The sensory information is fine, but your brain is not using correct predictions. When that happens, you feel dizzy. And again, this is a neural circuit problem that's leading to physical symptoms. Okay, so let's jump into a metaphor that I think illustrates this perfectly. Let's just say you decide to go to IKEA and buy yourself a brand new coffee table. Scenario number one, you open the box and you have all the correct materials, but the instructions are for building a bed. If you try to build with those instructions, even though all of the components that are in the box are correct, you're not going to get anything resembling a coffee table. This is dizziness. You're going to get a jumbled mess of something that includes some of the components but doesn't look anything like a coffee table. This is equivalent to when you have PPPD or vestibular migraine or MDDS without any evidence of any kind of physical tissue damage or injury. What's happening here is that your brain simply has the wrong instructions for using sensory information. Scenario number 2, you open the box and you have last year's coffee table model's instructions. You have all the correct components for this year's model of coffee table, but you have last year's instructions. You might get something somewhat resembling a coffee table, but if they've changed the nails or screws that you're supposed to be using, chances are your table isn't going to work out well either. This is dizziness. And this is equivalent to when you've had a change within your ear that originally caused dizziness, but your brain has simply not updated the instructions. In other words, its predictions, so that you no longer feel dizzy. So in this big metaphor, the problem isn't the components of the coffee table. It's not even really the instructions. They're not wrong instructions. They're just not appropriate for the specific coffee table you have. It's the fact that your brain has not updated them. And why has your brain not updated them? Because there's a fire alarm going off in your brain. That is the big premise of all of the work that I do here on the Steady Coach. The idea here is that your brain's primary purpose is survival. It prioritizes survival above all other things, including accuracy. For example, if you hear a buzzing sound and you're allergic to bees, are you going to wait and see if your appraisal is accurate, or are you going to get the heck out of there as quickly as possible? Obviously the latter, right? Your brain prioritizes survival. So the problem is really the alarms. If we can turn off the alarms, your brain will see that the instructions are incorrect. It has the right components, the instructions don't match, it needs to update them. Dizziness is actually just a cue that the instructions are wrong and that they need to be updated. What we need to do is help your brain update them by stopping the alarms from overriding your natural ability to update instructions. Your brain does not want you to be dizzy, but when it's prioritizing survival, it's unable to update the instructions that are keeping you dizzy. What things contribute to those alarm bells going off? In short, fear, focus on symptoms, anxiety, external stress, like stressful events, and internal sources of stress in the way that you relate to other people, yourself, and stressful events. It should be obvious then, at this point in the video, that the key to fixing this whole situation is to turn the alarm bells off so your brain can update the instructions to match what you actually have in your box. In other words, to turn off the alarm bells so your central nervous system can make correct predictions, change its predictions if necessary, to match the reality of the sensory information coming in from the sensory systems that comprise your balance system. This is accomplished broadly through 2 different means. One is exposure to the physical triggers, which basically tells your brain that the alarms are false ones. When your brain learns that the alarms are fake, they're false, there's actually nothing wrong with you, it will stop paying attention to the alarms and update the instructions the way that it should. The second way we can approach this is to reduce the alarm in a targeted way. This is via working with your fear of symptoms. Please see my video on somatic tracking for more about that. Link in description below. Working through your thoughts, which is actually a huge component of this video. Understanding where chronic dizziness symptoms comes from really helps reduce alarms around symptoms. Working with feelings, this helps promote safety in your nervous system, and I have an entire video about emotions that I will also link to in the video description below. And working through sources of external and internal stress. There are tons of videos on my channel about this, but I'm going to include one in the video description below specifically about dealing with stressors that I think you will find extremely helpful. So be sure to watch all of those. Just some quick tips for you before we go on how you can address physical triggers while you're working on those larger goals that I just talked about. 1, do the things that trigger you. Stop avoiding them. Now, there actually is some nuance here. If you are just pushing and pushing and pushing without working with your nervous system to turn down the alarms, this can actually be quite counterproductive. So please see an additional video below on how to expose yourself to triggers without reinforcing fear. This brings me to the second tip, which is learn to do triggering things while sending yourself messages of safety to counter the alarms that are going off. This can be things as simple as saying, I'm safe, and taking deep breaths, or it can be a little more complex and involve relating to yourself differently. And I'll have future content on that, so be sure to subscribe to my channel so that you're notified first when I release that upcoming content. Number 3, live with as much joy and connection as you can. I am aware that that may be a very big ask for some of you in the throes of it right now, but the more you can live in ways that are connecting and loving and safe to you, the more the alarm signals go down. Number 4, address your stress bucket altogether. Again, watch that video that I included in the video description on stress. This tells you all about the stress bucket and all the options that you have for reducing the kinds of stressors that lead to alarm bells going off. And finally, address your mindset. We talk a lot about mindset on this channel as well. For some ideas about how you can change your mindset about recovery, please watch the 5 habits video that I will include below as well. Lots of homework for you on this one, but the primary purpose of this video was to explain why physical triggers happen even when you have a neural circuit problem. I hope this was helpful for all of you. Looking forward to your questions and comments below. Please subscribe to my channel. Please like this video. Please share it if you found it helpful. And as always, thank you so much for supporting me. All of the things that you do, in particular the ones that I just mentioned, help me bring this content to more people who need it. Take care, everyone. Talk to you soon.